Next up, we have a special friend of mine, Joseph DeLong. We go way back. We actually used to work together in 2015 before Ethereum launched on blockchains at a bank and insurance company called USAA. And I'm super proud of where he's come since then. Not that he was ever in a place of like lower like status or anything, but he's basically like moved on from a like prestigious corporate environment to SushiSwap. And if I would have told you years ago that you were doing SushiSwap at this day, would you believe me?
No. My first ETHDenver presentation, I wore a suit.
So much since then. All right. Well, thank you so much, Joe. Take it away.
Yeah, sure. So, great. Thank you for having me. I'm really like grateful to be here. That last talk was really great. I really appreciate their insights. My topic is Anarchist Cookbook for Running an Open Org, and what it is I'm going to kind of detail my journey in kind of like how I've been, I've been at SushiSwap like a month and a week now. So it's going to be kind of like me exploring my like philosophy without like trying to like smell my farts too bad. I really just want to like kind of express how I think we can run open orgs going forward without being very smug about it. And I'll just kind of like go through each of these slides, and I'm going to riff on each of them, about that topic. Okay. Yeah, people. People are key. Hire good people. This is probably the most important thing. You want to start with a kernel of an organization of like very qualified people who are highly self-motivated, because that culture is like, as you go forward, is going to like permeate. And so from that, you'll grow an organization that has that as part of its culture. One thing you might ask is like, how do you get that right? Well, I think early on you have to have a like not you don't want to be too loose about your hiring. You want to be very specific and intentional, and so that part of that means like reaching out to your network and finding people that you think are qualified to meet the needs. Open org is a way of expressing how we work in an open style where we can have contributors kind of come in from the Discord, community members, people who are ex-sushi holders, LPs, are all kind of focusing on this individual product, not necessarily the structure. I think that that's kind of something that gets mixed up in that we kind of go, okay, well, we're going to do a decentralized org, we're going to do a flat organization, we're going to do we're going to kind of go full on with the anarchy theme, right? And I don't think that that's true. I think that having the right people and providing the right structure helps with that. And so early on, you want to hire really good people as your kernel, and that over time will permeate the organization. This is my favorite one, faux professionalism. So faux professionalism is like this, like me wearing a tie or wearing khakis and a polo with my company's logo on it, right? That's faux professionalism. I think what real professionalism is saying you're going to do something and doing it. Showing up on time as a sign of respect for your coworkers. Communicating with your coworkers with candor, but also a high level of respect in the way that you talk to them and address them. I'm lucky enough to have come from organizations where early on, at the same stage, I got to learn some valuable lessons about kind of what happens when you leave it kind of like a sort of a Lord of the Flies situation, right? You like it never descends into order, right? It only ever descends into chaos and kind of a divisive atmosphere. And once you get that atmosphere, you can't get rid of it. It's kind of like permeates the whole organization going forward. So you want to start from a place where people are kind of open and honest and respectful. That's real professionalism. Saying you're going to do something and actually delivering on it, being on time, showing respect for your coworkers in the way that you talk to them. Yeah, so this is another one that I like is don't just do business things because they seem like, or don't do just things because they seem like business things to do, right? Like one in particular might be hiring in a way that is, we get a recruiting firm and we're looking for this particular skill set. When you're early on, you can have kind of high touch because you're only hiring a handful of people. You want to make sure that you're kind of getting the best people. And so that's one of these business things that people do just because they're business things, right? Do we need a bank account? Do we need an LLC, right? Well, do we have problems that can't be resolved without those tools? And that's kind of one of the things. I think like SushiSwap as an organization will likely have a legal entity. Well, will have a legal entity very soon. But for the most part, right, not all open organizations are well suited for that. I mean, look at Wi-Fi, etc. Yeah, so this is our hiring process. For the offer is still out. They want to meet more of the team, but this is kind of like how it went down. We made an RFP. We tweeted about it, saying that we were needing senior Solidity developers as kind of like a call out. And then they would DM us, right? And then we would say, actually, a couple of them offered us their resume, and we don't really want that. We want to see, like, if we're talking about a development position, we want to see your code that you've committed. From there, you can take recommendations from them. Say, like, who do you know that I know, right? And go and find those people and get a feeling for how other people like working with them. And that's what we did in this situation as well. And then the offer letter, right? Doesn't have to be anything formal. It can just be a DM. With some of the cryptographic tools, we don't really need to have things like legal contracts in the instance of our pay. We do that through Sablier. We do streaming payments. Shout out to Sablier, really great product. So we can put their pay in there for a year and have it stream over the year, and we don't need to have some sort of like paper guarantees. Oh yeah, Overwork. I talked to the team about this a lot. Some people enjoy working 60 hours, 70 hours a week. Some of us have like families, like me in particular. I have 2 kids and a wife, and where I could probably pull like 60, 70 hours every week when I was much younger and didn't have a family. I now can't, but also I don't know that working additional hours at that level sustained is actually beneficial. I think most of the scientific research that's out there says that you start hitting diminishing returns after you get a high return for a very short sprint, but you achieve diminishing returns if you have kind of like a sustained pattern of overwork. And so one of the things that I say is that you don't necessarily, I tell them there's no expectation for you to be here and available at all times to be working on the project. You have to have a life because there's other things outside of our work. Oh, that's the wrong way. Yeah, blockchains are stupid. We're really good at they're really good at like certain contractual enforcements, but most of this is human coordination. And I think that is most clear at the rise of Snapshot, with Snapshot being a tool that's used for off-chain voting as a signaling mechanism, and then that signaling mechanism being enforced on-chain with a multi-sig. So the users come and vote and they signal their intent, and then the multi-sig holders will then go and kind of like carry out the action. And this is kind of like generally a human coordination problem. You cannot program into the contracts to kind of account for every single scenario that's going to happen. Even with like very sophisticated contract sets like Moloch v2 that allow for self-composition, you can't really program all of that in. Here's an instance. We have a multi-sig that has our ops wallet, and occasionally we need to swap our sushi for USDC or something to pay a contractor. We all have to kind of because of the time that it takes for a trade to happen, we have to coordinate as a group, and that doesn't always work. Sometimes we just send the funds to someone and say, hey, swap them and send them back to the ops wallet, please, because multi-sigs are difficult to hit kind of like time targets for things like trading, especially things that are high in gas. Flat organizations are bullshit. That is something that I've come to know to be true from other organizations that I've worked for. It doesn't work. And I'll tell you why. The reason is organizations naturally develop power centers. And in flat organizations, those power centers are opaque. If I'm working someplace and I don't know who my manager, who my boss is, or who I'm able to ask for help from, that's kind of a difficult problem, right? Like, let's talk about something that could happen in any workplace, even in open org. Let's say sexual harassment. Who did they go to? It's a flat organization, right? Everybody's a peer. That doesn't really make all that much sense. So we have to have some level of structure. People have to have a hierarchy, and by hierarchy, I mean leadership. And I think that leadership isn't necessarily a position; it's a behavior, right? It's like you can put somebody kind of in charge of something, and I think we've seen like many examples at the national level of the U.S. For like some time now about people who are put in charge at a national level and just are incapable. And so leadership, I think, is a behavior and not necessarily a position. And that's why you should stay away from flat organizations or saying that your organization is flat, because no doubt power centers, the second that you have to write a check, the second that somebody has to make a decision, somebody has to okay something, power centers develop, right? And so part of that is like bringing that structure beforehand so that it's transparent for everyone and everybody has a level playing field. Establish asset and capital controls. This is really difficult for something without a legal entity. Something that we've struggled with. Who do we put the domain? Who do we give ownership of the domain? We don't yet have on-chain, domain ownership outside of XYZ domains, right? So how do we do that how do we do that in the meat space? How do we control a AWS account? How do we control our Graph account, Gitbook, like any of these individual accounts, right? We have to have some sort of access control. We have to have some sort of security model. And if somebody just walks away with it and you're an open organization, what are you going to say? That person took our domain. Okay, who's we? Well, an anarchist collective of like me and some friends, that's not really going to make an adequate position for you to retrieve something that belongs to the organization. Capital controls. I've been inside organizations where at the initialization, right? Everybody's friends, everybody's cool, you know, guys, we don't need a multi-sig that's like gas heavy and like, you know, it's like we're not going to be we're chill, so like don't expect anything weird to happen with us, right? That's a complete like farce. You have to have that. It's just human nature. People have disagreements. Some people walk away, and sometimes they walk away with a big chunk of money, right? So the way that we want to do that is enforce that democratically through things like multi-sigs. This is my favorite one. Treasury management. Shout out to Krugman, who's doing a great job on the Yams treasury. And we've seen kind of, this is the problem, okay? So you hold a treasury, and typically you're going to hold it in your token. We hold most of ours in Sushi. EF holds most of theirs in Ether. And so we're like, this is something that we are struggling with, as well as I think our contemporaries. Being like, your runway is guaranteed by your treasury. No one has ever said that an undiversified investment is a good idea. And so like, if you think of it from that perspective, as this is a group investment to give you the runway to continue your development, you're in trouble if you have kind of some price fluctuation. This is like hearsay, so like take that with a grain of salt. But as I understand, like EF even had some trouble with the early, like they did their pre-sale and then they had a crash of the Bitcoin price, which kind of significantly reduced their runway. That has happened to a lot of projects. And so it's very important that early on, you're converting your treasury into something that has a better strategy. You know, not all stables, but maybe some stables, some of your own tokens, some of some other tokens on the market, right? Creating a basket, doing a good job of managing your treasury so that you can continue to provide the services that you have promised to your users. Yeah. This is Maki. This is something Maki brought up to me. It's no lizard people meetings. Lizard people are this conspiracy theory on the internet of like a reptilian Illuminati class that are like half alien breeds. Anyway, so like the whole idea is that like at the very highest levels of government, there are like these lizard people. You know, essentially every Congress member has been accused of being a lizard person at some point. But the point being is that like if we're making group decisions, kind of like isolating yourself and making kind of a pack or a group to kind of make a decision without the insight, approval, or even kind of the capability for anybody outside that small group to intervene is problematic for an open organization. We can't make decisions that way. And so with that, that concludes my talk. Thank you for having me here, and I really appreciate it. I don't know if we can take questions or.
Absolutely. If you want to take a look over on the right-hand side, there's a comment tab.
Sure.
Getting a lot of
activity.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, transparency. Yeah, treasury management. Yeah, definitely do that. Okay, how do you determine what is reasonable about work? Is it the amount of productivity fitted into a lot amount of time, or some other method? I don't know. I say like 40 hours. You know, like that's a standard work week brought to us by, you know, the labor unions. Let's stick to that. If you're enjoying yourself, continue on. Like that's, you know, that's, you know, that's what gets you going. But we shouldn't normalize that as like the expected behavior. It's kind of like Silicon Valley behavior of like, oh, you have to work these, you know, crazy 70-hour work weeks until you're, you know, you're 25 and, you know, you can finally afford a house in Palo Alto. I think that's unreasonable. We should be expecting people who are working to have the freedom to kind of have a regular life as well.
I'm sorry I didn't see you there. It's not what it looks like. I'm married, but anyways. Okay, so Joe, thank you so much for that. This has been one of the most commented about panels or talks today. Everyone's been giving thumbs up in the chat, so go check those out. Feel good about yourself, and thank you so much for joining us.
Cool. Thanks, Hudson. It was nice seeing you.
Mm-hmm.